Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Wispin here, and welcome back to another video. Today, I am going to be showing you everything you need to know about breeding in Pixelmon. The majority of breeding mechanics are taken directly from the main series Pokemon games. However, there is a couple of little quirks and features that make breeding in Pixelmon slightly different. So we're going to get into all of that, and we're going to start off by showcasing how exactly you can get a ranch block, which is the item that you need to start breeding. Then we're going to talk a little bit about breeding environments, which is the environment that a Pokemon requires in order to start producing eggs. And then finally, we're going to talk about specifics with breeding mechanics so that you can get the best possible Pokemon from the parent Pokemon. So we'll go into IVs, held items, and all of that different stuff. So actually, before we get into any of the tutorial, I want to explain why you should be breeding your Pokemon and what the point is, because I kind of always assume most people know, but I should probably get into explaining exactly what IVs are, how they work, and how they affect your Pokemon stats, and why they're actually worth it and super important to the game of Pokemon. So, starting off, IVs are actually called individual values. They're basically like genetic stat points that your Pokemon have, and during the breeding process, you can pass down those genetic stat points from your parent Pokemon down to its offspring. All 6 of your Pokemon stats, attack, special defense, HP, and speed, all have their own IV stat, which can range from 0 to 31. The higher that number is, the better your Pokemon stats are going to be. And like I said, the best way to improve your stats is through the breeding process. So I'm going to go ahead and show you 2 quick examples of why you should be using IVs and breeding when playing Pokemon. So if we head over and check out this Pikachu's stats, he's level 100, but if we go ahead and check his IVs using /IVs1, we can actually see that he has 0 in every single IV stat. And so those are his stats with those IVs. If we actually look at our second Pikachu, these are his stats. So comparing, there is a massive difference, and we can actually go ahead and check his IVs. He has 31s in every stat, which is the absolute maximum you can have. So here's just a side-by-side comparison of the difference between a perfect Pokemon and the worst possible Pokemon, and those stat numbers actually make a massive difference in battle. So hopefully now you have a little bit of a better understanding as to why you would even want to be breeding in the first place. So let's get into the rest of the tutorial. So we're going to start things off by talking about how you can get a ranch block. Now, if you're playing on my server, Poke Central, you will be able to buy these by doing /warp daycare, walking up to this NPC here, and purchasing them for 200,000 coins each. And so it's really straightforward. You just exchange your money for a ranch block, and that is exactly how you get them on my server. However, if you're playing on single player or a different server, you'll most likely, unless they have a different system in place, need to craft your ranch block. So in order to craft a ranch block, you need a regular piston, a Pixelmon PC, and a Minecraft flower pot. In order to craft the PC, which is probably the only item you don't know how to craft from this, you need to have all of these items. So a glass pane, redstone lamp, redstone surrounded by aluminum plates on each side. In order to get these aluminum plates, you actually need to mine some bauxite. Just spawns out in the world, just like iron ore, diamond ore, all that stuff. Smelt it down into these aluminum ingots, and then use a hammer to actually hammer it out on one of these Pixelmon anvils. So once you put together your PC, you can craft up your ranch block, and you can get started on setting up your breeding environment. So we're going to go ahead and just place this down on the floor. And now let's talk a little bit about how the environment system in Pixelmon works. In order for Pokemon to actually start breeding in Pixelmon, they need to be comfortable in their environment. And you can see if you mouse over your ranch block, there will be a grid on the floor, and that shows you the radius of the ranch block. It calculates values from each of the blocks in that radius and determines your breeding score, which the higher the score, the better, and each block has its own individual value for each type of Pokemon. So for example, dark type Pokemon really like coal blocks, so they get a value of 3 for every coal block in their environment. Now, I'll have links down in the description below to the wiki page for breeding and environments, and that is where you're going to be able to find all of the block values for breeding Pokemon determined based on the Pokemon's typing. So that link is going to be very important because I cannot cover every single block. There's literally dozens of them in this video, but we are going to talk about breeding our Poochyena, which is a dark type, with our Vulpix, which is a fire type, and we're going to be setting up an environment for them. So there is a minimum breeding score that you have to meet for each of your Pokemon in order for them to start breeding, and then the higher the score gets, the faster they'll actually produce eggs. So in order to make this a little bit easier to understand, we are going to use an example, which is going to be breeding our female Vulpix with our male Poochyena. Now the female always passes down the species of the Pokemon, so we will always be getting Vulpix eggs from this breeding setup, but because both Poochyena and Vulpix are in the same egg group, they can actually breed together. Egg groups are really cool because it allows you to breed Pokemon of different species and still produce eggs, but like I said, the female always passes down the species. If you want a full list of all Pokemon egg groups, that'll also be linked down in the description below. I'm not going to get into it too much. There is actually 15 different egg groups. One of them is actually undiscovered, which means it cannot breed. One of them is Ditto, which can breed with any Pokemon, and the other 13 are just groups of Pokemon that can breed together. A Pokemon can only breed with other Pokemon that share its egg group. So in this case, both Poochyena and Vulpix are in the field egg group, so they can actually breed. So let's go ahead and put them into our PC, and then we can put them into our ranch block. And I actually need to give myself a Pikachu so I can put my Vulpix into the PC here. And then we'll go ahead and put both of these guys into the ranch block. Now, if we go up and talk to them, you can see in our chat here, it says, Vulpix has a crush on Poochyena, but doesn't feel comfortable in the environment, and that's because we have not set up the environment around our ranch block to be good for either of our Pokemon. But the first line there, Poochyena has a crush on Vulpix and Vulpix has a crush on Poochyena, tells us that these Pokemon can breed as long as the environment is set up properly. So let's start setting up our environment. As I said, there are certain blocks that each Pokemon type likes. So a fire type Pokemon will not like the same blocks as a dark type Pokemon. So we need to make sure we set up this environment to suit both of them. So we'll need to add some fire blocks and some dark type blocks. Now, the best dark type block, in my opinion, is probably coal blocks, but I'll show a list here on the screen. You can decide what you want. Mob heads also have a higher value, but I feel like that's a little bit harder to actually obtain. So we're going to go with coal blocks in this setup, and fire-type Pokemon actually like fire, so if we place down some Netherrack, light it on fire, that will be the highest point yield for the fire-type Pokemon. So if we look at our radius, you can see it is a 9x9. I will say the block underneath the ranch block does not count towards your points, so you don't need to worry about that. You just need to worry about the 9x9 space around it. So if we dig out around like this, we should be able to fill this entire area in. So now that we filled in the default radius for our Pokemon ranch block, we should be able to talk to both our Poochyena and our Eevee somewhere over here in the fire, and both of them will actually say the exact same thing, which is their love grows for the other one rapidly every day. Now, your Pokemon can say different things once you have your environment set up, and the different messages actually align with different speeds that the Pokemon will breed, and that speed is determined based on the number of points these blocks give that specific Pokemon. So in our example here, both fire and coal blocks give 3 points per block. We have 40 blocks of both fire and coal, which comes out to, I believe, 120 points for each of the two different types, fire and dark type. 120 points puts us in the second to highest breeding speed, which produces one egg every 50 minutes or one breeding stage every 10 minutes, which we'll get into breeding stages here in a little bit. But the main thing we want to focus on is the fact that we are currently in the second to highest breeding stage. Now, you might be wondering, we have the full radius filled in with the highest possible blocks. How can we get that number up even higher to where we can be in that top speed? And the answer comes with boss drops. So boss Pokemon actually have a chance to drop what is called a ranch upgrade. You can apply these to your ranch blocks in order to expand the default radius up to a 15 by 15 area, which is absolutely massive. Currently, we're sitting at a 9 by 9, so you can just think about that. 15 by 15 is a much bigger area. Take your ranch upgrade, which, like I said, is a drop from bosses. Right-click on your ranch block, and you can expand it in any direction you want, and it will actually expand one full row out in whatever direction you select. And so we've expanded every direction by 2, which means we are currently in an 11 by 11. So now what we can do is fill in this extra space with more blocks, and that should allow us to reach that max tier of breeding. So I went ahead, added in all of the blocks. We didn't actually need the entire space, and now we actually have, I believe, 55 coal blocks and 55 fire blocks, which if you do the math on that, 3 points per block should come out to 165 points. Now, the maximum breeding speed is achieved once you hit 139 points for each Pokemon. So we can see now when we talk to our Poochyena, he says he falls madly in love with Vulpix every day, which means he is currently breeding at the maximum rate, which is 1 egg every 37.5 minutes. So now that our Pokemon are compatible, they are breeding, they will go through different breeding stages, 0 through 5. They're currently in stage 0 because they just started breeding, but because we are at the top speed of breeding, they should go up a stage every approximately 7 minutes. These different stages are actually represented by different colored hearts that float above the Pokemon's head, and we actually have 2 different boss drop items that can speed up the breeding process. We have Silver Hourglasses and Golden Hourglasses. Silver Hourglasses will actually only increase 1 Pokemon, so if we go ahead and right-click our Vulpix here, it will actually increase the single Vulpix breeding stage up to the next level. So now you can see it has a gray heart, but our Poochyena does not have any hearts because it's still on the previous breeding stage because we gave just our Vulpix the Silver Hourglass. So if we give our Poochyena a Silver Hourglass, he will actually also increase up to the first stage of breeding. But like I said, there are 0 through 5 stages, so there's technically 6 stages in breeding. If we give a Golden Hourglass, it will actually increase the breeding stage for both of our Pokemon. And I believe we actually just need to right-click the ranch block in order to apply that. And you can see now we have the second stage of breeding, which is purple. And so normally at our breeding rate, which is the maximum, we would get one of those stages every 7 minutes. But if we use these hourglasses, we can just completely skip that entire process. Now we are on stage 3, which will be blue hearts. It takes a second for them to update, but it should be blue hearts here in a second. There we go. Right? Yep. Okay. And then if we use it one more time, we'll be on yellow heart, which is stage 4. If we use it one more time after that, we're on stage 5, which is red hearts. And then one more time should produce an egg. If we go ahead and click right here, we can see they now have an egg available. So normally that process would take, like I said, 50 minutes if you're at the maximum breeding speed, but because we use these items that drop from bosses, the Golden and Silver Hourglass, we were able to get an egg straight away. If you get a Pokemon with the ability Magma Armor or the ability Flame Body, which Slugma actually has both of these abilities, so he's a really great Pokemon for this, but it works with any Pokemon that have either of these abilities, your egg will actually hatch twice as fast as long as that Pokemon is the lead in your party. So make sure, put it in slot 1, put all of your eggs in slots 2 through 6, and you should be good to go with hatching your eggs twice as fast as you usually would. All right, so now we're going to move on to the fun part, talking about inheritance and how IVs are passed down from the parent Pokemon and how you can improve your chances of getting a better Pokemon every single time you get an egg. So let's first start things off with IVs. So a Pokemon's IVs are actually determined based on the parent Pokemon's IVs. 3 out of the 12 IVs from the combined total of the parents are passed down to the egg. So in our example here, I set all of my Poochyena's IVs to 31. And I set our Vulpix's IVs to 0. So if we go ahead and check the egg, it should have at least 3 IVs that are either 0 or 31, and then the other 3 should be totally randomly generated. So let's check on our egg and see what we ended up getting. IVs number 3, this is our egg's IVs. So as you can see, our attack stat was passed down from our Poochyena. Our special defense stat was passed down from our Poochyena, and our speed stat was passed down from our Vulpix, and then our HP, defense, and special attack stats were all randomly generated numbers. Now, if we go ahead and hatch this egg, hatch 3, we can actually go ahead and check its nature, which is hasty. If we look at our Vulpix, it is modest, and our Poochyena, which is quirky. So as you can see, the nature is completely randomly generated unless you actually use a specific held item. So in our case, we probably want to pass down our modest nature from our Vulpix, so we're going to use an item called an Everstone. Now this item can be obtained through Pokéloots, boss drops, and shops on some servers, and in single player I believe some NPCs might sell this item, but your best way to go is through Pokéloots or boss drops. So we're going to go ahead and take this and we are going to put it on our original Eevee there, because that will guarantee that our egg will have that modest nature, which is great for us because that's the nature we want on our Vulpix. Now, these are the rest of the items that I personally use when breeding. There is the Destiny Knot, which I find to be the most useful, and there is the power items. Now, the power items guarantee that the Pokemon holding this item will pass down the IV that lines up with that specific item. So, for example, if a Pokemon is holding a Power Bracer, then its attack IV will pass down to the child Pokemon. If it's holding a Power Lens, its special attack will pass down. Its defensive stats will pass down depending on which one of these items you're holding. Speed will pass down from the Power Anklet, and HP will pass down from the Power Weight. And to be more specific, Power Belt will actually pass down physical defense, and Power Band will pass down special defense. Now, earlier I said your parent Pokemon passed down 3 of their 12 total combined IVs. If you use a Destiny Knot, that number actually goes up to 5. So 5 of the baby Pokemon's IVs come directly from the parents if one of the parents is holding the Destiny Knot. Now, you might think whichever Pokemon is holding the Destiny Knot will pass down 5 of its IVs. That's not actually how it works. It passes down a total of 5, but they're completely randomly chosen between both of the parent Pokemon. So it's not just passing down 5 from the specific Pokemon that is holding the Destiny Knot. It's completely random. But in our case, we actually might want to pass down 5 of our IVs because we actually have a really good Poochyena with perfect IVs. So there's a much better chance if we pass down 5 of our IVs that we will have a really good egg over just relying on random generation of numbers, which can be anything from 0 to 31. So we're going to put the Destiny Knot on our Poochyena, guaranteeing that our parent Pokemon will pass down 5 of their IVs. We're going to put the Everstone on our Vulpix, guaranteeing that that Modest Nature will pass down. And we are going to go ahead and put these 2 back into the PC so we can put them into our ranch block. And we are going to get ourselves another egg and see how it's improved. All right, so we have our new egg. I used my hourglasses to skip the time. Let's go ahead and collect this and take a look at our brand new Pokemon. Now that we're using our held items, we should get a slightly better egg. So if we do /IVs number 4, that is our brand new eggs. Now, as you can see, 5 IVs passed down this time instead of the 3 previously. Now, because our EV in breeding currently has all 0 IVs, that's really not that great, but we can replace that EV with this new egg, and that will start to make progress on getting better IVs because this already has 3 31s that were passed down from our Poochyena. The attack and the special defense were passed down from our Vulpix, which isn't great, but these IVs are a lot better than our current Vulpix's IVs, which are all just 0s. We also got the defense at 11, which was just the 1 IV that was randomly generated. So now we've gone ahead and hatched that egg. We are going to take out our original Vulpix, and we are actually going to replace it with our brand new Vulpix, and we are going to move the Everstone over. And because I'm in creative mode, sometimes there's some bugs with the items being removed from your Pokemon, but if you're in survival, you should be good. If we go ahead and check our nature, because we have that Everstone, it did actually pass down the Modest Nature, so that is perfect. We are going to go ahead and put this brand new Vulpix into our PC, put it into the breeding, and now we should be able to get an even better egg the next time around. All right, so we have our next egg. I went ahead and skipped again with the golden hourglasses, and we actually have our Pokemon named over on the side as Original, which is our first EV that has 0s in every single stat. Gen 1, which was our EV that we bred with no held items. Gen 2, which is the one that we just used to produce this egg and had the Everstone, guaranteed Modest Nature, and actually was breeding with a Poochyena that had a Destiny Knot, so guaranteed 5 IVs passing down. And now we are going to take a look at our egg to see if it is actually improved. So let's go ahead, turn back on our chat, and we can actually see the egg actually has not improved. So we did not get lucky there. So we got incredibly unlucky, and it actually ended up passing down the attack and special defense stats from our original Eevee, which both just happened to be 0s. That can happen sometimes. It's not very likely for that to happen, so I am going to go ahead and quickly get another egg, and we are going to see if that one is a little bit better. I actually didn't have the Eevee in here because I was not expecting to get such a terrible egg. That is how unlikely that is. So let's go ahead, produce another egg, and see if this one is a little bit better. And we'll actually move it down here just so it stays in order. So IVs number 5. And as you can see, that is actually a pretty big improvement. So we still have the 331s, but now we don't have multiple 0s. So if we go ahead and hatch egg number 5, we can actually switch it out with our currently breeding Eevee, which was our Gen 2. And we can, I believe this would be Gen 4 then. And we can use this EV to continue on the process, and we can just keep repeating that. So basically, you just continue this process. It's pretty straightforward from this point on, and you continue until you end up getting a better Pokemon. So just continue replacing the worst IV Pokemon with the new, better IV Pokemon. Eventually, you should make your way up to 90 and 100% Pokemon. I'm going to continue this breeding process, and we're going to see how many generations it takes to produce a 100% IV egg from this setup. Well, okay then. When I said I was going to continue breeding until I got a perfect Pokemon, I was not anticipating getting all the way up to Generation 65. Now, technically, it's not Generation 65 because we didn't actually change out the female Eevee for many, many generations. But if we go in here, we can see, I believe our currently breeding generation Eevee is actually only Gen 14. So we went from 14 to 65 without getting a single Pokemon that was better than the original Generation 14, except I did happen to get 3 EVs here that were all 98% IVs, whereas this original Gen 14 was only 94%, but all 3 of them turned out to be male, so we had to continue on breeding, and eventually we got to the point where we had this EV right here. Now, you might be thinking, oh, He's talking about it this much, so this EV, it must be perfect because Generation 65, that's a lot of eggs. No. So if we go ahead and check its IVs, it is 99%. Now, the good thing about this is that we are going for a special attacking Pokemon. We have the Modest Nature, which is already correct, and every single IV is perfect except our physical attack, which means technically this is a perfect Pokemon. So even though we never got that 100% IV Pokemon, I highly recommend looking for eggs that you produce that have all 5 perfect IVs except the 1 IV you don't need, which is normally either going to be physical or special attack, depending on which one you don't actually use. Now, in some cases, you're going to want a mixed attack Pokemon, which in that case, I guess you have to go for that 100%. But other than that, I would highly recommend just settling for whatever percentage it is, as long as the 5 IVs you actually need are perfect, because getting that final IV is completely just luck. Technically, there is a 1 in 32 chance, because an IV can be anywhere from 0 to 31. So there is a 1 in 32 chance that your egg, even when breeding 2 perfect Pokemon with all 31 IVs, that egg is still not going to be perfect. There is a 1 in 32 chance that it will be perfect, but that means there is a 31 out of 32 chance, which is a very high chance, that it will not be a perfect IV Pokemon. So if you're breeding 2 Pokemon that are not perfect IVs, those numbers just completely skyrocket. So I think we did pretty good. Generation 65 eggs hatched because the original is not counting. We got ourselves a usable perfect Pokemon. Not technically perfect because it is only 99%. We're 1 off, but that's close enough. And I'm not going to sit here for another probably 3 or 4 hours trying to get a perfect IV Pokemon. So hopefully I remembered to explain everything in this video. If you guys have any questions about breeding, leave them down in the comment section below. I kind of just threw this whole video together without too much planning because I got requested it a whole bunch. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, if you want more tutorials like this, let me know down in the comment section. What do you need a tutorial on? And of course, like always, if you did enjoy, make sure to subscribe to the channel. This channel is fairly small, so every subscriber really does mean a whole lot. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one.